So this next session is going to be full of marketing contradictions. How many people in the room have heard of Microsoft Dynamics 365? Okie dokie. How many of you think you know what it is? So, I have a mission to try to let's see if we can clarify something around Dynamics 365. So, the reason that we have this huge investment in this version of NAV 2017 is partly because of Dynamics 365, okay? Dynamics 365 is part of the Office 365 story. So let's call it the 365 story, okay? The story of attracting people to use Microsoft software in a cloud, software as a service, interconnected. That's the sort of the goal. And if you think it wasn't that many years ago, people had their own Exchange servers, everybody had their own Exchange servers, and now lots of people are migrating to Office 365, okay? So it's part of that story. It's a transition, and it's going to take some time, but Dynamics 365 is part of that story. But it also is part of a bunch of other products that are coming into this same family. We're going to talk about a little bit later about Power Apps and Flow, which are two products that are complementary to Office 365 as well as Dynamics 365. Yeah. And obviously we had Power BI that came out last year, all part of the same story. So this is the really simple slide that Microsoft gave me to try to explain this. As you can see from this really easy to read slide, basically what was called Project Madeira. So Project Madeira was what 2017 was called when it was in its project phase, okay, NAV 2017. Basically, come the end of 2016, about where we are now, Project Madeira got released as two things. It got released as NAV 2017, the system we know and love and are showing you today, and it also got released in the US as Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Financials. Okay? Now, I know it says Business Edition there. I will explain that. At the same time, as you can see underneath, Microsoft Dynamics NAV carries on with 2018, 2019, and so on. So it carries on with its own contribution to the world and evolving the product at the same time that it is in the Microsoft Dynamics 365. So Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Financials is fundamentally, well, it is NAV. Okay? If any of you have signed up for the free trial in the US, you'll see that. And at the same time, AX became Microsoft Dynamics for Operations. Okay? So, for Financials, for Operations. Now, the first thing to get your head around, does anybody remember when NAV was called Navision Financials? Some old people. So when I started selling Navision, as it was then, back in 1995-96, NAV was then called Navision Financials. It was the bane of our lives because it had order processing, it had warehousing, it had stock management, job costing, and yet it was called Navision Financials. So people would say, "Oh yeah, we thought it was just a finance package." They didn't realize it had all this other stuff in it. So it was a real pain. We finally it got that got lost. They amazingly went from calling it Navision Financials to Navision Attain, a whole different problem. But anyway, so having got rid of that problem, we now have that revisited because Dynamics 365 for Financials has the same, still has stock control, still has purchasing, still has sales order processing, and so on. Okay, so equally, Dynamics 365 for Operations, what is currently called AX, obviously has financials, as AX always has. Okay, so that's the first thing to try and just get your head around. The second thing is, when you then take the flavor of Dynamics 365 and you combine it with Dynamics CRM and a few other things like Power Apps, then you get something called Dynamics 365 Business Edition or Dynamics 365 Enterprise Edition. Okay? So, As many of you will know after all these years, Microsoft love a nice blurry story. You know, when they started calling all the products Microsoft Dynamics, it was a nice, easy way to say, oh, look, these are all the same thing, when we all know they're individual products. And this is part of that evolution, to just continually just have a brand and make the sort of the underlying technology something that people shouldn't have to think about. So since we don't care about the other thing, AX, we're going to concentrate on the Dynamics 365 full financials. So when added together with Microsoft Dynamics CRM, will be called Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Edition. Okay? So that's the difference if you see full financials and Business Edition. It's about packaging it up with other things. As I said, Microsoft Dynamics NAV still continues. The on-premise or even put in the cloud because you want the whole of Dynamics NAV still continues. Okay. It's available now in the US. Dynamics 365 is available now in the US. It's going to be available in the UK somewhere about the spring next year. It's a subscription in cloud, limited customization because it's a multi-tenanted platform, version of NAV. It's cut down, it's got certain restrictions. You can only have one location for it, or no location, I think. One location. It's not got manufacturing in it and so on. So it's a cut down version of NAV. They're really aiming it at the moment at the, let's say, Sageline 50 market, that type of environment. That's where their initial marketing effort is going, to capture that high volume of people, low number of users, limited functionality. Okay, that's the sort of starting point. Of course, we expect it to evolve, and certainly over the next year or two, there'll be more and more functionality put into that version. Okay. It will be app supported. People will develop apps for it. We are ourselves developing apps for it. Those apps are just NAV extensions. They also will run in NAV systems, your NAV systems. So we are creating a NAV app version for Dynamics 365 of our enhanced NAV product. We'll talk about that later on. That will run both on Dynamics 365 and on NAV. So, not just financials. If you have for business, it will be linked with CRM. Don't forget, NAV obviously still has its own built-in CRM, but this is part of the reason that we have these improvements in 2017. They've made that CRM connectivity between Microsoft Dynamics CRM and NAV CRM even better. So, it's fair to say it's very confusing because it's very confusing, okay? So if you don't understand it, you're not alone. It's that blurry Microsoft messaging and trying to understand the bit beneath it. For finance does have operations in it, and for operations does have finance in it. Okay? It's about the next generation. And to be fair to Microsoft, I've been involved with them for quite a long time now, and I often complain about where they are at different points with things. I think the thing you can see is they're thinking, they're 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead. They're not thinking about things for this year and next year and the year after and what you want to do with your NAV version the next couple of years. They're looking at where do we want to be in 10 years and how do we get the momentum of moving people that way. You've only got to look at the people that put their hands up today with Office 365. 5 years ago, you'd have had no hands up. So, it's an amazing progression, but it takes time. So, the simple point about setting which type of people should go for which type of product, I've never liked. Most of you here know. We've got some huge NAV customers. We've got customers with over 1,000 users in one NAV system. We've got customers with over 1,000 NAV databases. We've got huge volumes going through our NAV systems, but Microsoft need to simplify things. So you will see messages like that. It is the same messaging we've had with NAV and AX for many years, for the same reason, obviously. But the important thing is when you take the Office 365 plus this stuff in the middle and you add Power BI, Cortana Intelligence, and all the nice things of Power Apps, Flow, Common Data Model, all of those things, when you package them together, are where Microsoft see the new world of the products that we'll be using. But it's very important to say that bit in the middle there is NAV, and therefore the same things apply. Office 365 plus NAV plus Power BI, Cortana Intelligence, and so on is the same story. You're gaining all of the benefits of all the investment that they're putting in to the cloud version of the product, the cut-down high-volume version of the product, you're getting all of those advantages because it is within the NAV system. Okay? It's part of the reason they've gone down the simplification route. There's a view that if you're a small firm, you need simpler screens than you do if you're a big firm. I've never held that. I think if you're an accounts payable person, you need the accounting payable invoice screen to be simple regardless of how big your firm is. But they've finally put that action in to simplify the product, partly to support this move. So we're gaining all those benefits in NAV. Very rough order of magnitude. It's launched in the US and it's about $40 per month. I'm guessing that by the time you put your 365, but it is officially on the slide, Ian's guess only. So it's a per user per month thing. Of course, again, makes less sense to people who've already purchased their license. In effect, you'd be repurchasing it. So the reason I'm explaining this today is not to say this is a great thing, you should go and look at it, and equally to say you should ignore it. It's just I need to educate you on what it is, and hopefully if you understand what it is, you can take a view. So those are sorts of numbers I'm sure my friend at Microsoft would love to chat to you about this subject, should you wish to collar them. I just put this up again just for sort of price comparisons. AX is still a big, expensive system. They haven't changed that just by putting the brand at the end of the name. Okay. So, never one to let a good marketing idea go. As you can imagine, we're currently called the NAV people, and we are still going to be the NAV people. But because we also want to tap into this new market, we also are part of the program of adopting customers as they sign up for Dynamics 365 and say, I've got a little company, I'd like to sign up for this. Customers are still going to go to Microsoft's site or our site, decide they want to sign up, put their credit card in, and start to use it. So you will see some branding called the Dynamics 365 people. That is us, okay? But we are still the NAV people. So, in summary on all that, there are a lot of mutual benefits. We're getting a lot of pull-through from the investment they're putting into Dynamics 365. That starts at NAV. They put the functionality into NAV, it overspills into 365, and vice versa. It's all about connecting up all of these different Microsoft products, both NAV and Dynamics 365, all connected up with Power Apps, Flow, Power BI, Office 365, and so on. The other thing that's worth saying is, as you can imagine, once lots of people start to use a multi-tenanted single version of NAV, as you all know, one of the things you want to do is extend it. You want to change the way it is because your organization is slightly different. It'll take some time, but those things will start to come in the product. They started a couple of years ago when we got extensions, so the ability to make changes to NAV and deliver changes to NAV without amending any code. So our latest version of Enhanced NAV, for example, doesn't change any standard objects. It can just sit alongside NAV using events and extensions so that it doesn't change the core product. And a lot of these tools are coming about, again, because of this new world. If you have lots of people sharing a system, you need to be allowed to have certain people have slightly different functionality than others. So, to take that mutual benefit slide and to show you where they're heading with this and what we'll be able to do in the future, we're just going to show you a little bit about the new feature in the Page Designer.
So I've opened NAV 2017 in a slightly different mode. So I've opened this in design mode. The significant difference you'll see on the role center is a tiny icon in the top right-hand corner that prompts me to open the Page Designer. As I go through NAV, looking at different pages and screens, that icon is always present, much like the search icon. So if I look at, for example, an item card, and then I click on this design mode, and then extend the bar, I get the design bar. Now, this gives me the ability to modify NAV, to change it as a developer would, but without changing code, without being a developer, without talking to any techies at all. So you can see across the top I've got various options. I've got some details about the page. I've got functionality to add fields. I've got functionality to add actions. Those options across the top of the screen. I can add parts and change parts. Parts in NAV are the sublists or the things in the fact box. They're often parts I can choose. And I can also, if I want, click on here and create a brand new page from scratch based on information in the database. At any point, I can click on these icons and view my changes in the web client, the tablet clients, or the phone client to make sure I'm not breaking anything too significantly. But let's go through the process of adding a field. If I click on the field menu, it lists all the fields that are on the item table. This is kind of techie, but the idea is that on a normal item page, you as users, at the moment in 2016 and before, could choose which fields you want to show on the item page as long as they've been made available. However, there are a bunch of other pieces of information on the tables which you don't always have access to. So you can see here I've got a bunch of fields. Some of them say placed, which means, for example, the number field is already on the page. But things that say ready are ready to be placed. So I can simply click on that, drag it onto my page, and I've now created a modification for that page. Again, if I switch my tablet mode, I get my description too will appear there, and the same in the phone client. So I've changed the definition of the page. I can also not just take fields that exist, but create brand new fields. So these are real fields in the real NAV database. So when I click that option, I get a selection of number, text, related data, external data, and option fields. The important one for us on this example is an option field. So it's a field with a set limit of values. Click on Create. I'm going to give it a name. It's my brand. Give it a nice description. This is the brand. Something very useful to the user. Click on Next. And now I'm prompted with a choice of what my options should be. So for my brands, I'm going to have bicycles. So I've got Halfords, Superbike, other bike, whatever other bikes I've got. So these are my brands I'm going to apply. This is the list of options I'm going to have. I can also choose an initial value. So I can say when a new item's created, it defaults to this. And you can choose whether that should be cleared. So whether I'm allowed to set this to nothing. I press on Finish. That'll appear in my list. I can then drag it onto the page, much like I did with the description field. So you can actually add fields to the database. Once I've finished, I click Stop Designing, and it'll prompt me now to what to do with these changes. And this is really important, because I can choose that this change, this field and this change to the page are available for either just me, or for people with my profile or my role, so the sales department, for example. Or I can choose Save for everyone. That applies to everyone in this NAV system. I can additionally publish it to the store. So you can, with this functionality, create extensions to NAV that you can put in a store, put a price on, and theoretically sell to other NAV systems. And that's the page designer. The important thing to caveat on this is a very early view of this. It isn't available yet. It's coming, we think, early next year. So at the moment, we're still a bit unsure about the final details. But that's what they're doing.
So I think that's very nice. You can see, again, it's that pull-through. They need to do this for other reasons, and we get a lot of benefits from it. I just find it slightly amusing, as somebody that's been using it now for 20 years, that even 20 years ago, I could go into the customer list, go Tools Designer, get a list of fields, and drag them onto the page. So how things have improved over these years, going back to things we always used to be able to do. As I said, it's all about interconnectivity. These different apps, Office 365, Power Apps, Flow, CRM, and so on. It's all about that interconnectivity. So what we want to do now is to run through some of the things which are standard in 2017, which help around this interconnectivity. We're not going to demonstrate them all. There's a session this afternoon where we'll go through some of them. There's a CRM session this afternoon where we'll talk about the connectivity. Exchange contact synchronization has been around for a long time, but it's now Outlook synchronization of contacts has been around for a long time. It's now Exchange related, so it's not syncing to your local Outlook. It's syncing direct through Exchange. So very easy to set up Exchange synchronization and get your contacts into a separate contacts folder. CRM built-in connectivity as it has for a long time, but it has improved. Power BI being built into the screen we're going to show you. Azure Machine Learning, so Cortana as it's branded, is now built into forecasting of stock and cash flow. Again, whole session on machine learning this afternoon that Paul's doing. And then Microsoft Power Apps and Flow. We're going to show you one of those also this morning. First thing, we're just going to show a little bit about Power BI being built into NAV, just to show what that means. Paul.
Thank you. So, back into a standard NAV role center. If I slide down this role center to scroll down, I should see at the bottom here I've got a Power BI reports box panel. This is, again, pointing live at Power BI, so it's updated on the fly, and it's interactive. So I can click on here, and I can filter my lists and my charts to see the information. And obviously, if I hover over things, as you would do in Power BI, you get some snapshot information. The nice thing is this, you can design any Power BI reports you want and add them to this part. So I can now just skip to my next report, and I get an item sales and profit. Now there's a limitation here. I've only got a certain amount of space, and if I've designed something for a big screen, it'll squish it down. It's still interactive, and I can still use it, but they've given us an option to expand that report into a full screen view. Essentially, they're loading Power BI inside a NAV screen, and I can now filter my charts, go to separate tabs, all those sorts of things, and it's just showing the Power BI reports that I will otherwise be able to access from their website. So that's Power BI, how they've integrated it. The other thing to show is Cortana machine learning. Cortana machine learning. They've integrated this into NAV into two areas. There's now a sales forecasting piece. So NAV will predict sales of your products and make recommendations. And there's also a cash flow forecasting piece. Both of these things are very similar, as you can imagine. So if I go to my item list and look for my, which bike was it? Hybrid bike. Hybrid bike's got some sales history, so when I look at the card, we'll see on the right-hand side I get a forecast box. So what NAV is doing is sending the data from NAV, all the sales history, to the machine learning, to Cortana's machine learning. I'm getting back a result, a prediction of what's going to happen over a certain period of time. And you can see I've got a little bit of inventory, and I'm going to run out pretty quickly based on its forecast. There is a setup behind here, so you can configure how far back to look, when to warn about stockouts, how many historical periods to use, all these sorts of things you can configure for the system and how it uses this forecasting. The final result is, though, they've added an option on here, so I now know I'm going to run out of stock pretty quickly. I can therefore, directly from the item card, create a purchase order, and it'll create me a purchase order. Hopefully it does. Oh, yeah.
That'd be one, didn't it?
Always one. So that will create me a purchase order, and it'll actually fill in the quantity on the purchase order with the amount it recommends me to buy based on its forecast. And that's the machine learning.
So again, there's a session this afternoon talking about, it's quite a big and interesting subject on the whole of the machine learning thing. So go and quiz Paul this afternoon. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Power Apps and Flow. Power Apps and Flow. Power Apps is an easy-to-use, easy-to-design mobile app designer, and Flow is a process connector. It connects products like Trello or Todoist or MailChimp and all sorts of different things. When you do something here, do something over there. Okay. With the time we've got today, we're going to concentrate on the Power Apps. We're just going to show you how quickly we can create a Power App, and I'm going to introduce my friend, Mr. Nick Macon, to come up and explain how to do that. Nick, welcome into the stage.
Thank you very much. We'll just get straight on to the demo. Hi, everyone. So, what we're going to do now, I'm just going to show how easy it is for mere mortals or non-developers like myself to look really smart and create their own bespoke business apps. So, if we log it into Power Apps, I'm going to show that process from the very first point. You can sign up for free as well if you have Office 365, so you can go and have a look at that. We'll just go and sign on straight in. And once we do that, you can see we've got a new app button there in the bottom left-hand corner. So by pressing that, we can either design this on the web or downloading a Windows client. We'll just do this on the web for now. Grand. So hopefully you guys will find it a lot easier to log in than we do. And once we get in there, if it loads, then great. So we're going to select that thing on the right-hand side, and we're just going to select a connection. This connection is going to connect us to Power Apps to some data. This data can be Dynamics NAV, it can be data from a third-party service, it can be SQL, or it can be an Excel file in our OneDrive account. In this case, we've selected our NAV connection, and we're going to specify our customer card. This is just something we've made available from NAV, and we can go and press connect. This is now Power Apps is going to take the data it finds on that page in NAV, and it's going to build us an app just like that. It can build it using a phone format or a tablet format. At the moment, this is just going to give us a phone format to have a little play with. So, a few things it's done there. The first thing you can see on the top left-hand side is that it's given us a list. The second page down, you can see it's given us a view mode, so we can view information about a specific customer. And then the next page down is an edit mode, so we can make a few changes to that customer when we're out and about. So, going back to that first page, we can quickly amend these fields, because these are just the first fields that Power Apps has found on the page. So if we select this area, we can go in here and put something more useful like the phone, the balance, the salesperson code, and the name. Just something we may want to see, because we've got a limited amount of space to play with. So again, you can choose whatever fields you want and make these available. You can make these sections bigger as well to put more fields on there. But once we go and select a few fields, it'll start to look a little bit nicer. So once we've done that, we're just going to go into the second page, which is our view mode. And again, we can just remove some unnecessary fields that we don't have to see. Again, we can delete them. If we want to, we can go and add some new ones on there. And now, if we just go back, we can select a theme as well onto this app if we want to make it a little bit prettier. In this case, we can select the Aqua theme if we're feeling lazy. That's going to put a whole theme onto the Power App. And finally, if you want to change the title of what this app is called, we can just select the top there and change it from customer card to customers. Yeah? So that's just some basic configuration. If we press the play button, you can see in the top right-hand corner, this will give us a preview of what our Power App will look like once our users log onto it using their phone. Yeah? So you can view all of our customers in NAV there. We think at the moment as well, this works with 2013 R2, so you should be able to use that. So you can view all of our customers. We can press the little arrow there to drill into the customer, and we can toggle it into edit mode by pressing the pencil there. Great. So that's how easy it is for you to get going and to create your own bespoke business apps. If you want to find out any more, give me a shout, and we've got a few examples we can show you. Otherwise, I'll pass back over to Ian and Paul.
Thank you, Nick. Very good.